and welcome to the Intel Brief. Today is Tuesday, 11 March. I'm your host Daniel, and today we'll be covering Duterte has been arrested at Manila Airport on an ICC warrant. Student protesters have blocked the television station in Serbia. And the Trump administration has been ordered to pay $2 billion in aid. So firstly, former Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte was arrested at Manila Airport after the International Criminal Court issued a warrant for his arrest in connection on his war on drugs. The arrest followed an official notification to Interpol Manila, and Duterte, age 79, is now in the custody of authorities. Duterte had just returned from Hong Kong when he was detained, with his allies protesting at the airport, claiming they were prevented from approaching him. The ICC stated that the arrest was necessary due to concerns that Duterte would not voluntarily comply with a court summons, as well as the risk of interference with investigations and witness security. China responded by warning the ICC against the politicization and double standards. The ICC has charged Duterte with the crime against humanity of murder for thousands of deaths during his anti-drug campaign from 2016 to 2022. While police reported 6,200 killings, activists have argued that the true toll was much higher. Duterte withdrew the Philippines from the ICC during his presidency, halting an investigation into these killings, but the probe resumed in July 2023 after the court rejected Manila's objections. The current president, despite his political feud with Duterte, has chosen not to rejoin the ICC, but he stated that his government would cooperate with any international police requests to detain Duterte. Meanwhile, Duterte's former legal counsel has condemned the arrest as unlawful. So what? This is a significant move and is likely to cause some political fallout within the Philippines, though it is not a shock to hear. I'm sure most people remember stories of when Duterte was in power. There was some pretty crazy stuff going on, and it highly likely led to the deaths of numerous innocent people. While some will argue that drug dealers deserve it, you need to remember that a lot of these drug dealers have little choice. This is possibly their best chance in life. Also, if you can kill anyone for being a drug dealer without any oversight, people will just kill anyone they want to, or anyone they have a feud with, and just call them a drug dealer, and also just plant drugs on them. And next, hundreds of student protesters in Serbia have blocked the public television station, Radio Television of Serbia, in Belgrade overnight, escalating ongoing student-led demonstrations. The protesters, sparked by a deadly train station collapse in Novi Sad last November that killed 15 people, have grown into a broader movement against the current president, Alexander Vučić. The students accused the public broadcaster of being biased in favor of Vučić's administration. Riot police used batons to disperse protesters, blocking an entrance to the RTS building, with at least one officer injured, reportedly struck by a fellow officer in riot gear. Despite the blockade, RTS continued broadcasting as some employees managed to enter the building through a side door. Protesters have vowed to maintain the blockade for at least 22 hours, with another major rally planned for this weekend. The student-led protesters have gained widespread support from Serbian citizens, with tens of thousands attending rallies since November. President Vučić, in a televised interview on Monday night, condemned the protesters and warned of a forceful response to the upcoming Saturday rally, dramatically stating, "You'll have to kill me if you want to replace me." Vučić and his Serbian Progressive Party, in power for over a decade, have dismissed the protests as a foreign-backed attempt to destabilize Serbia. While the rallies have been mostly peaceful, there have been reports of violence against protesters by Vučić's supporters. So what? These protests have shown little sign of slowing down, despite the length of time they've been going for. Though it is still unlikely that Vucic will resign, it is hard to see how this situation will end without something changing. It seems likely that the longer the protests continue, the more government forces will use force to disperse these protesters. Additionally, it is possible that the country could look to hold elections of a way of re-legitimizing Vucic's rule, but that would of course have the risk of him being unelected. And lastly, a US district judge has ruled that the Trump administration must pay nearly $2 billion in outstanding foreign aid for work already completed after the funds were halted on January 20th, Trump's first day in office. The judge in Washington emphasized that the president is required to spend money approved by Congress. However, he declined requests from nonprofit groups and businesses to reinstate thousands of cancelled foreign aid contracts and grants. The ruling followed a recent US Supreme Court decision, which rejected Trump's emergency request to freeze the aid payments. The Supreme Court's 5-4 decision last week upheld this judge's ruling. Meanwhile, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that the Trump administration had concluded their 6-week review of the US Agency for Foreign International Development, or USAID, eliminating 5,200 of its 6,200 programs. Rubio argued that many of the scrapped programs misused tens of billions of dollars and did not align with the US national interests. He stated that the remaining 18% of programs would be managed more effectively under the State Department in consultation with Congress. So what? This will definitely cause some upset within the US, particularly in the hardcore MAGA crowd. Though it is unlikely the Trump government will back down and pay these bills easily, it will be interesting to see how they approach this outside of their usual internet slander on X. As we've previously talked about, these cuts to aid will almost certainly have a huge effect on the US's soft power, and while some of this is understandable, the long-term effects are likely to be significant and unforeseen. Thank you for tuning in to the Intel Brief, your daily update on global geopolitics, brought to you by HM Intelligence. You can support the show by sharing it with your friends and leaving us a 5-star review. And if you're curious to learn more about intelligence, why not check out one of our courses in the description below. Thank you for listening. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you next time.